Hi everyone! In today's Martini Monday, I'm going to be ranking all of the eyeshadow palettes that I tried in the month of January. So if you're curious to find out how many eyeshadow palettes I managed to use this past month and what are my thoughts on all of them, then I hope you will stick around and keep on watching. Happy Martini Monday, everybody. While I was finishing getting ready, my martini started curdling a little bit. So I'm sorry if it doesn't look very appetizing. I have a feeling it'll still taste delicious, but it was shaken up and looked a lot better about 20 minutes ago. And then I got distracted figuring out what lipstick I'm gonna wear and, you know. We are drinking today. Well, I am drinking, and maybe you will join me if you would like to. But I am drinking an espresso martini. But I decided, because I realized I have a ton of coconut milk in my pantry, so I decided actually to try putting a little bit of coconut milk in it. And I Googled espresso martini with coconut milk, and lo and behold, a recipe popped up so that I knew the approximate proportions. And I will, as always, make sure to link that down in the description box. Let's try it. I took a tiny little taste right after I actually poured the martini into my glass in the kitchen, but I haven't really had a proper taste. Oh, that is quite nice. Yeah, it was better when I had initially shaken it up. I feel like the ingredients separated a bit, so I feel like all the coconut milk kind of solidified a little bit and floated up to the top, since it is a cold drink after all. And all I'm tasting on the bottom is basically, you know, the vodka and the espresso liqueur. I kind of wish I drank it a little sooner, but oh well. It is still yummy. So in today's video, I decided to rank all of the eyeshadow palettes that I got a chance to try in the month of January. I have seen numerous people do numerous versions of this video. So the two people that come to mind most recently that rank everything and not just the new that popped into my head are Samantha March and It's Just Steph. But I have a ton of friends and also other people that I don't know personally do these types of videos. I feel like the majority of people though tend to wait until they've tried like 10-ish new palettes and they rank those. So not just everything that you got a chance to use, but specifically more new products. And I decided that since my motto of this year is discovering my collection, that I would do these sort of videos with all of my eyeshadow palettes, whether they are new, whether they are old, whether there is something that I feel like, you know, has run its course and is going to leave my collection, or whatever the situation might be. So that's what we're going to do today. And before we jump in, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself for those of you that are new to my channel. Hi, welcome. My name is Natalia. I'm a concert pianist who loves all things beauty. And as I just mentioned, this year is all about discovering my own makeup collection. I have purchased quite a lot of products over the past 2 years. Before that, I did a year-long no-buy here on my YouTube channel. And prior to that, I was just a YouTube watcher and a makeup aficionado and just acquired way too much. So I am trying to weed through my collection, see what's going to stick around this year and what is going to no longer serve me. And of course, there will be sprinkling of new products here and there, but they will be ones that I have brought into my collection with much thought and great intention. So if you're interested in that type of content, I hope that you will join us here, and please subscribe. Like this video if you like it, comment down below and say hello. And without further ado, let's go ahead and rank all of the eyeshadow palettes that I got a chance to try in the month of January. Before I start, I have to give a shout out to my brand new sweater. This is the second or third time I'm wearing it. I'm loving these very white sleeves. What I'm not loving is that my coat, which is black and fuzzy, is getting itself attached to the sweater. But nonetheless, I don't know if you guys can see, but it is this really cute cable knit mock neck, and it is from Banana Republic. And as I said, I love these sleeves. So I have a feeling as long as this thing doesn't start pilling on me immediately, I need to figure out a way to clean my coat off of this sweater, but I have a feeling I'm gonna be wearing it a lot. The only thing is, between my coat and my sweater, my hair, in the cold weather that we actually have had in New York the past couple of days, my hair is static central. I mean, I feel like I could light up my apartment with the amount of electricity that my hair is producing. If you guys see a ton of flyaways, because it's been literally like earlier sticking to my face, it's been a mess. Anywho, wanted to share my sweater because I'm super proud of this purchase. I was walking by the store and saw it on a mannequin and made the sales girl take it off the mannequin because it was the only one they had in the store. And luckily it fit. So now that we got this little mini fashion haul out of the way, let's talk about the eyeshadow palettes I tried in January. I have a little bit of a cheat, I guess you could say, because I really wanted to round this out and make it a perfect 10, because I had 9 eyeshadow palettes, and then I remembered that I still have never done my 2022 ranking all of the eyeshadow palettes I tried. Let me know if I should still do that or if that ship has sailed. I mean, last year I did that video in like March because I still wanted to, and it seemed to still do pretty well on my channel. So I might still rank all of the eyeshadow palettes that I tried, and there's one eyeshadow palette in these 10 that I wore on New Year's Eve. So technically I put it on my eyes on December 31st, but it actually stuck around on my eyes into January 1st. So to round this out and make this a perfect 10, I'm including that eyeshadow palette in this ranking. Call it cheating, call it what you will, but I needed my perfect 10, okay? So there. Starting with number 10, this is a palette you guys recently saw in my basket of doom. And if you watched that video or the update on that video, you know that this palette will be leaving my collection, and that is the BH Royal Affair. I had such high hopes for this palette because I remember back in the day really enjoying it. And I love the color story of this palette. The color story I feel like is very versatile. It has so many different tones of brown, and while yes, there's a ton of browns here, if you look closely, no two browns here are remotely the same. We have a more camel, like a mustard camel, then there's this softer brown right above it, and then there's 4 very distinct browns, everything from like a darkish reddish brown to more of a terracotta shade, true medium brown, a very cool almost gray tone brown, and then there's different shimmers too. There's this whole row of very different shimmers. There's a few other ones sprinkled here and there. There's some really fun pops of color like that chartreuse. There's the pop of coral right here, pinky coral. There's a beautiful green, burgundy colors down here. I mean, you've got a lot of options here. And I remember back in the day really loving this palette. But either my preference and my tastes have been upgraded and I'm now an eyeshadow, or at least more of an eyeshadow snob than I used to be, or this formula is no longer what it used to be. I just really struggled to use this palette. Now granted, I only swatched the shimmers and they weren't as wow as I remember them being back in the day. The look I did in January with this palette, which you guys saw in my Basket of Doom update, was an all matte eyeshadow look. And I struggled. These were really powdery. They would just disappear on my eye. Like swatching, it was still super pigmented, really creamy. When I swatched these just on my hand, when I was trying to figure out what look I was going to do, I was blown away by these mattes. I thought, this is going to be a walk in the park. I'm going to have such an amazing time making this all matte look. That's actually why I decided to go with an all matte look, because the mattes impressed me so much in the swatches, the shimmers less so. And then the look just dragged on forever because things would just blend away, and I really wanted to try to use a few different shades of brown. I used the coral, which actually this shade was very nice. I used that in the center of my lid because I did almost kind of like a fake halo eye situation. I was really bummed about this one because this was one I was rooting for and I really wanted it to stay in my collection when I pulled it into my Basket of Doom. It just disappointed me, unfortunately. So this is coming in at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is actually a little trio that I picked up at TJ Maxx or Marshall's. I can't remember. This is from Glossier. They've been having a lot of Glossier, and I'm assuming it's because maybe Glossier is repackaging or reformulating. I know they're, I think, rumored to be going into Sephora, so maybe there's like a whole thing going on, rebranding or whatnot in preparation for that. So this little trio is in almond. Probably to you it looks very bland, and it is, but that's why I actually bought it, and I was curious about it because I mentioned in one or two of my past videos that while I do love creating intricate looks and just playing with my makeup, and usually I am an all or nothing kind of makeup wearer, I'd like to this year find a bit of a middle ground and find a few looks that work for me on those days where I do want to wear a little bit of makeup, but I have no time. And I thought, well, wouldn't this be perfect? Throw this in the crease and then just put one of these shimmers. This is more of like a satin. This is more of a sparkly topper. Do all that and it'll be really, really easy and super, super quick. And it was easy and it was quick, but I was so not blown away by how it turned out. It was just, I don't know, it was extremely monochromatic. Like, I expected this to be monochromatic, but I think if maybe the matte was a slightly different tone than either one of these shimmers, or if maybe these two shimmers, one just was a little lighter and one a little darker, so that I could create at least a minuscule amount of depth with this look, then I have a feeling I would have really enjoyed this palette because I like the quality. Super easy to use, to blend. I had absolutely no problems in that regard. But it just was so meh once I put it on my eyes. It just didn't do anything for my features or my face. I just felt like my eye looked flat despite the fact that there are 3 different textures in here. I guess I'm just learning that maybe I am not somebody who can pull off like a super easy look that is all one shade.
I've got neighbors upstairs moving around, which is unusual. Usually they don't move around at 2 o'clock in the morning. Usually they just get up at like 5.
But yeah, I guess I just need to experiment more. Maybe I'm either like a one shadow, one and done kind of person, or I need at least something to be a different color, because using 3 shades and having it all look pretty much the same was just frustrating and very unimpressive to me. That is why this is coming in the 9th spot. I liked the quality. I really disliked the result. In the 8th place, we have my Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons. This is another palette that was in my January basket of doom. And while this palette also left me pretty unimpressed, it is still pretty easy to use. The quality is not terrible. It's still held up all through these years. But at this point, I'm just used to better shadows. I'm used to more interesting color stories. As I said, I guess I'm just becoming the spoiled brat of eyeshadows. And that is why this palette will also be leaving my collection. I don't know if there's really anything else to say about it. I mean, most people by now don't even have it, I would imagine. Probably have long ago decluttered it. But it's a very soft formula as far as the shimmers are concerned. Nothing here is super metallic and super sparkly. It's much more subdued, much more calm in terms of its impact. It's still a good palette. It really is. It's still a good palette. And if I only had 10 eyeshadow palettes total to my name, I would not be decluttering this by any means. I think this still is a really good palette and can create some really lovely looks. I just know with everything that I have, I won't be reaching for it. So that's why this one got decluttered. And I just wanted to rank it. And as you can see, like, this one ranked over the BH Royal Affair and even the Glossier, because it has a lot more versatility and ease of use and still a very good solid formula. If it wasn't for the fact that I have a bajillion eyeshadow palettes, I don't think I would part with this one. I think it's a very nice palette. In 7th place, we have the ColourPop It's My Pleasure. This one is ranking lower on my countdown, not because I don't like the colors. I actually love the colors. I very much enjoy purples, and there are some very interesting ones, some duochromes, just a really nice combination of colors. I really still wish I would enjoy this palette a lot more than I did. The main reason I didn't is because the formula is no longer good. I don't know if it was never that great and I just just wasn't any wiser back then, because I have had this palette for quite a few years, or I don't know if because I've had this palette for a while, the quality has gone downhill at this point because it's drying out. The shimmers felt powdery and dried out, even if the colors were still very pretty. So it's one that I can still create really lovely looks with, but unfortunately it takes a lot of work because it's no longer, well, it probably was never a high quality eyeshadow palette. Let's face it, it's ColourPop. It's an affordable, you know, fast fashion makeup brand. So I'm sure they are not using the top-notch ingredients and spending oodles of time perfecting their formula, considering that they have a release every third day. Nonetheless, this, in my eyes, used to be a really, really nice palette. I remember really enjoying it when I first started using it. Unfortunately, this last couple of times that I used this, I just was not thrilled with the formula at all. Still love the color story, still love the different textures and the different colors that they put in here, because there's, you know, the mattes with the sparkles, not my thing, but okay, the regular mattes, and then there's some more satiny shimmers that are more smooth, or at least used to be, and then there are some more sparkly ones. So there's definitely a variety here, and I think that's a nice thing that ColourPop does, but the formula didn't hold up. My sixth palette on my countdown is actually the palette I have on my eyes today for the very first time. And that is one of the reasons for why it's ranking sixth, because I think it has potential, but this is the very first time I've used it. And granted, there are a couple of palettes in here that I've only used once. I don't think this is going to be the only one, but based on first time user experience, I'm going to rank the BH Blueberry Muffin in sixth place. Maybe it was just the color selection that I went for today, but I can't say I had the easiest time using this palette. I think the final result came out really nice, and I actually didn't necessarily have any specific struggles with any specific shades. It's just a combination of shades I didn't feel like worked together really well, and that may have been just user error. So I have Delish as my blending shade, and I know a lot of these more colorful shades you're supposed to just pack on and then buff out gently. I am not that kind of eyeshadow wearer. I still like to have something in my crease, and I debated using Fluffy, which would have been a very easy choice, and I have a feeling I would have then struggled a lot less, but I went with Delish. It wasn't necessarily patchy, but you know, I had to really buff. I had to really blend for a little while to get an even application, and one that was not like getting caught in my little 41, almost 42-year-old eyeshadow folds. So it's not, you know, there's a lot of factors at play here. But nonetheless, Delish is what I used as my transition shade. Then I went with So Good on my outer V, and then I wanted to deepen it up a bit with Decadent, which I thought would be a bit more dark brown. And I understand again that mixing blue and brown, you know, you're gonna get some muddiness and whatnot. What ended up happening in my case is I got like really purple, like a deep purple. Now looking at the shade closely and at an angle, because I haven't swatched this palette first, I actually see a little bit of that undertone that surprised me when I was using it. But when I was looking at the shade straight on, you know, in the not great lighting that I'm working with in this apartment. Oh, which reminds me, I didn't even turn my pretty lamp on behind me. Hold on a second. Let's do that, because I always like to have that little amber light behind me. And we're back with the pretty light behind me. Sorry. I completely forgot. Filming, as always, super late. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. It's been a long month. I don't even know. We're just doing it, is what we are. So yeah, I've used these two in the outer V. Didn't quite get the result that I wanted, but I figured out a way to make myself happy in the end. And then all over the lid, I have Yummy. And this I loved. This shade I absolutely loved. Yummy is definitely yummy. And then I have Cravings in the inner corner and slightly, I would say, a quarter of my lid, not a third. And then on the lower lash line, I think I just did some combination of the same shades. I didn't really get very creative with the lower lash line. So yeah, I'm excited to play with this more. I mean, if we've been in this space long enough, we've all heard of BH Blueberry Muffin, and I'm like the last person trying it. It was in my basket of shame. I've had this thing for a couple of years and I just never got around to it. So this winter I vowed to get around to some of my cooler toned palettes that I think are perfect for the winter that I haven't tried yet. I have friends that love this. I have friends here in the space that don't like it and have decluttered it. So by now it seems to be a bit of a mixed bag of opinions. I'd love to hear yours if you have this palette. Back when this first came out, I feel like everybody was raving about it. So I don't know, again, I don't know if formulas keep changing that quickly, and that is why people's minds are changing because they're trying more indie brands and other things. But I'm very excited to keep playing with this one. You guys might see some of these palettes in multiple months, and I hope you don't mind, but I really want to be true to what I've actually tried in that month and rank them against, you know, that pile of palettes. This is not necessarily a ranking within my entire collection. This palette might be much better than 20 of my other ones, or, you know, vice versa, but within the ones that I'm playing with in that given month, right now, I think this is a very fair representation. It's a 6 because it's the first time I'm using it, and also while I really loved the final result and really loved some of the shades here, I struggled with it a bit. So I need to play with it some more and see where things stand. All right, we're right at the halfway point. We've reached number 5. Number 5 is another palette I have tried for the very first time in the month of January. Even though it is an old palette, it was a limited edition palette. It was very hyped up when it first came out, and that is the MAC Feast Your Eyes eyeshadow palette. This was, I think, a fall release of 2021 for MAC. It's gorgeous. It's not as gorgeous anymore because I have dipped into it a couple of times. The imprints are beautiful. The palette is beautiful, and I had mentioned this one in my winter palettes that I would like to try. I talked about how, with the exception of these 2 eyeshadows that scream fall to me, I could make everything else work for the winter, and that's exactly what I did. I actually wore this in one of my January videos. For anything I have looks just like in my previous Martini Monday, in my Basket of Doom update, I will try to include them. I don't promise that I can do that all the time just because of time constraints. If I want to get a video up, sometimes I unfortunately cannot do everything I want to do. I'm not saying I'm doing the minimum over here, but like I'm trying to be consistent, and it's really, really hard to film and edit and also do all of the things other YouTubers who actually do this as a job are doing. I have no idea how people do, you know, all the swatches and everything. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. And if I have to choose between putting out one top-notch video a month and actually trying to get at least 1 or 2 videos a week for you guys, I'd like to be in the camp of 1 or 2 videos a week at the moment. So I'm sorry if there's not enough looks or swatches or any of that in my videos. I hope you can go then and find that information somewhere else. And I hope that you don't mind. I loved using this palette. Here's my only con so far. And again, this is one I haven't used much, so I need to see if it was user error, if there's other ways that I can approach these shadows, maybe other brushes, other techniques. But at the moment, this palette is kind of like the absolute opposite of the BH Cosmetics Royal Affair. That one, the shades swatched super pigmented, but they were so powdery, they would just fly off my eyelid the moment I put a brush to them, and I would just have to keep building and building and building. This, the shadows are much more dense, almost like a cream to powder formula. I don't want to really call it that though. So I feel like the pigment doesn't come on the eyelid the same, it doesn't translate on the eye the same way that you see it in the pan. You really have to build to get that saturation. It doesn't fly off my eye. It's not a powdery eyeshadow at all. It's actually much more dense, much more thick. I don't even know how to describe this formula. I'd actually be curious to hear your thoughts. If you have this palette, what would you compare this formula to? Because I really loved using this palette. but it took time. It took time to build up the saturation. Now, what that tells me is I could really get some soft eye looks out of this palette super easily if I don't want to sit and build up the saturation. If I want a wash of color, I think this would be a great one for that. As far as smoothness and blendability, it's all there. It's just that if I want this to really give me that burgundy color, it's gonna take me a little while to get there. Or if I want this brown to really be that deep, rich, chocolatey brown, I'm gonna really have to go in with my brush quite a few times to get there. So this is why it's number 5. This is why it's kind of middle of the road for me at the moment. I really love the shades. I love the looks that I created with this, but it doesn't have all the points for me. Like if I could make this a little bit of a faster palette to use to get the result that I want, then I think this would have made it even higher on my list. Don't get me wrong, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still really curious to continue using it. It's not like this is going to leave my collection anytime soon. It just wasn't the absolute best palette I've ever tried. In 4th place, I have my Glamlight Dirty Martini palette. I wore this palette in a Martini Monday when I was actually having a dirty martini. So I did a little bit of a play on eyeshadow there. And I've used this palette before in 2022 as well. And so far, I've really enjoyed every look that I've created with it. I do have to say the one con for me personally, because I am so pale, it's a little bit limiting in terms of range for me. I would have loved to have one really light shimmer, because I feel like these are all beautiful shimmers and they're all very, very different. But on my skin tone, because I'm so pale, it almost always ends up being a little bit more dramatic than I might want that day, right? I want to have the option to go into an eyeshadow palette and create a light, a medium, and a dark look. I don't want to call it, you know, a daytime, a nighttime, a smoky, a sultry, whatever. Just in terms of colors, light, medium, and dark. I want to be able to have all 3 of those options if I want them. And I am one who doesn't usually mix and match palettes very often. I go into an eyeshadow palette and I'd like to create a look with that eyeshadow palette. I don't mind monochromatic palettes as long as they have a range, even if it's all blue, all green, whatever it is, but I don't have to be dipping into multiple palettes. I didn't dip into multiple palettes with this. As I said, I rarely do. So because of that, while I was using it, I just found myself wishing, oh, I wish I had a lighter matte, because there are no light mattes here. Or, oh, I wish I had a really nice bright one bright light shimmer. It's just a personal preference. Other people don't want those things, and you will watch their video and they will actually say that they kind of wish that the very lightest matte or shimmer was replaced with another shade. We all have different preferences. We all have different skin tones. For me personally, if this had one lighter matte and one lighter shimmer, I think this would have been a home run all green palette. Pretty much an all green palette. I really like this though, and I'm always excited to use it, and I look forward to using it some more, and it is in 4th place for that reason. In 3rd place, we have another greenish palette, and this is my cheat. This is the palette I wore on New Year's Eve. So I put this palette on December 31st, and it stayed on my eyes through about 2 o'clock in the morning on January 1st. So we are including it so that I can have 10 palettes in this video. This is the Odin's Eye and Angelica Nyquist collab. This is the Hello palette, and this is the only Odin's Eye palette I believe I own, yes. And that was the only look I had ever created with this palette. And I loved using it. I really had a blast using this palette. I used these 4 shades, this quad here in the corner. Let's see what else. I used this, I used the deep brown, and I believe I also used River. So yeah, I used a whole bunch of mattes just to create some gradients. I don't remember now if I used River all over the lid, and then I used like the green in my inner corner. I can't remember the look I created. I unfortunately did not take any pictures. I just had a good time with some of my close friends and family. New Year's Eve for most Russian people is an at-home, like a stay-at-home holiday. We're homebodies on New Year's Eve. It's essentially kind of like our Christmas Eve, especially for the generation like myself and older. We still grew up in the Soviet Union where religious holidays weren't allowed to begin with. So everything that people do on Christmas, we usually do on New Year's Eve, which is cook a lot of food, sit around, have a great time, eat and drink with family and friends, and then, you know, do gifts under the tree and all that. Like for us, that's a New Year's Eve sort of thing. Because of course I lived in the States by now for many, many years. Some traditions have shifted, but the fact that New Year's Eve is still celebrated with my closest family and friends, that hasn't changed. So anyway, went off on a tangent there. What I was trying to say is I was too busy having a great time with people who are near and dear to me, so I don't remember exactly what I did. I do, however, remember that I had a blast playing with this palette, and that is why it's in the third place, is because even though I used this one also only once, just like the blueberry muffin, I remember having a much better user experience first time around. So this is definitely one I'm going to continue wearing. I hope that you guys will see it in future monthly rankings. Let's see obviously how I do with all of the other eyeshadow palettes I have in my collection, but I really hope to make time for this one more often in the future. In second place, I have Huda Beauty Empowered palette. I actually keep reaching for this one, and I have already created at least 3 or 4 looks with it, and this is a pretty brand new palette to me. In fact, out of all the ones that we are talking about today, this is my newest palette. I started using this at the end of December and then used it a couple more times in January. You guys have seen this in action in a video. I did a Huda Beauty try-on video, which I can link if you guys are curious, but I really am enjoying this palette. I'm enjoying the quality, I'm enjoying the versatility, and this is a great neutral palette. It gives a lot of depth, a lot of variety. Again, for me personally, would have loved an even brighter shimmer. I definitely feel like that's one con. The lightest shade in here is this Bold Moves, and for somebody like me, that's like a mid-tone shimmer because I am so pale. So I don't really have too many options as far as very light shimmers are concerned. I haven't used the cream shades yet. I know I really should try. I guess they're used as liners or all over the lid. I haven't used this Manifest shade, which I think is the one that has like the silicone in the middle or something. So I can't tell you much about those, but I've used most of the mattes, most of the shimmers, with the exception of that really bright Charisma shade. I've been really enjoying this palette, and if I didn't have as many palettes as I do, I have a feeling I would be pulling for this one even more often, because I do catch myself thinking about it and then saying, yeah, you should use something else, because you've got like your Basket of Doom palettes to try, and you have your Basket of Shame palettes to try. I have a feeling, again, if I had a collection with, let's say, even just 30 or 40 palettes, this would be one I would be constantly reaching for. Another palette that I hope will make it into a future monthly ranking, and one that, while it was the most expensive item I purchased in that Huda Beauty Black Friday haul, I don't regret spending the money. I'm really enjoying this so far. All right, drum roll please. If you guys have watched my videos, maybe you know what is the one palette I've had on my eyes in the month of January that I still haven't mentioned. It's an oldie but a goodie. It is sentimental, it is bittersweet, it is beautiful, and it is the Sydney Grace Tiny Marvels palette. I wore this palette in my Beauty Resolutions tag, which was originally created by Mel Thompson, as was this palette, and this palette just never ceases to amaze. I love the Sydney Grace formula. The only con potentially to this, for those people that maybe like a thinner consistency, is that the shimmers are a bit on the thicker side. They are very metallic, go on very smooth, but they're, I don't want to call them heavy, but they pack a punch, and they do definitely coat your eyelid with a good amount of pigment. They're not, you know, the kind of formula that's like very airy on the eyelid. I personally don't mind that. I like the wabam, punchy, sort of in your face, hello eye look. This palette gives me all the versatility that I could possibly want. In this case, I have my light matte, I have the light shimmer in web, so I can always lighten anything else up. I can use that as my inner corner highlight. I can put that as a spotlight on the center of my eyelid if I feel like I've gotten too deep or dramatic with anything. I finally got a chance to use Meadowhawk for the first time this past month. That is a shade that has been calling out to me ever since I got this palette, and I was trying other ones in the past. You know, of course, Fire Butts is a known hit in this palette. There's just endless amounts of looks here. Every shade is top notch. There's not a single dud in this palette. I'm sure if you guys watch YouTube videos, you've noticed that it just almost doesn't ever happen that people dislike this palette. And that is for a reason, because it's not like only the top influencers are hyping this up. Every single person, from your, you know, regular micro, mini, invisible influencers such as myself, or even people with fewer subscribers, to people that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views, who've ever tried this palette, come back saying it's an amazing palette. And that's because it's an amazing palette. And it is very unfair, probably, for me to put almost any of my palettes against this one in these monthly rankings. I have a feeling if I come back to this palette later this year, it will always be in the top 2, because it's one of my top, I don't even know. That's maybe a good video idea for the future once I try more palettes in my collection and remind myself what I think of them. But I have a feeling even after I try everything, this would be like one of my top 5 palettes of all my palettes in my collection. I love this palette so much. So yes, Tiny Marvels is number 1. I absolutely adore her, and we are going to drink to her. Tiny Marvels for the win in the month of January. And that is that for my January ranking of all the eyeshadow palettes I tried this past month. I don't promise that I am always going to do this video every single month. I'm gonna try. As long as I feel like I have 5, then I think it's a worthwhile video. Let me know what you think. Let me know if that's fair. Like if I have a slow month, a month where I wear makeup less, so I'm really focusing on very few palettes, I might skip out on this. I think as long as I have 5 or more eyeshadow palettes in a month, I am going to try to do these eyeshadow palette rankings, because I love talking about eyeshadow palettes. I love looking at eyeshadow palettes. I love hearing your thoughts on eyeshadow palettes. It's one of the main reasons I decided to do this video. I wanted to not only share with you what I used, but also get to hear what you used, which of these palettes you have in your collections. What do you like? What do you not like? How would you have ranked this? All of those things I am curious about. It makes me so happy to talk with you guys down in the comments. Yeah, please. Let's chat away down there. I'm so excited to hear your thoughts, and if you liked this video, and if you think I should keep doing it with 5 palettes or more. And other than that, this Martini Monday has come to an end. So for those of you that haven't yet, I urge you to please subscribe and come back to my channel. And I hope that all of you are doing really well. Thank you as always so much for all of your support and for spending time with me. And I hope that you guys are continuing to stay safe and healthy. Take care of yourselves and those around you, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Cheers and bye guys.